Okay, we are very pleased to have Garrett Rucinski as our speaker today. He is Director of Engagement for City of Refuge. He will tell us about their mission and services and recent challenges due to federal program changes and funding cuts. As father to a 9-year-old boy and 7-year-old girl, foster father to 2 boys, and husband to Dr. Kylie Rucinski, Garrett feels utterly blessed and works to use his agency and blessings to help lift others up. Raised in a bilingual home in Ohio, packed with hosted international students, Garrett earned his Eagle Scout, then deferred a year to study in Chile with Rotary Youth Exchange. Time abroad and a minor in Spanish helped him achieve fluency. While working in international programs at Mizzou, he helped fundraise to grow outreach and welcome events for international scholars and students and their families. Garrett then worked at Central Bank as a relationship manager for 3 years, utilizing his local networks to advance not for profits, minority owned businesses, and advocacy efforts in general. These efforts included organizing a community roundtable on welcoming Afghan refugees to Colombia via collaboration, not competition. In 2022, he joined City of Refuge and was blessed to help with their growth into their new location, the old Landmark Bank across from Columbia Library. City of Refuge helps over empowering them past obstacles, helping navigate education like English for children and adults, and paving the path for entrepreneurship opportunities. City Preschool opened over a year ago, and City Cuisine, their culinary program and food truck, launched in summer 2024. Garrett's family has been fostering children through Coyote Hill since mid 2024. In his spare time, Garrett loves gardening, cycling, playing guitar, and all things Christopher Nolan films. Welcome, Garrett.
Thanks so much, Kathy. I appreciate you guys. And thanks for the intro. There was one part where your audio cut out, and I could see people on the edge of their seats. What she was saying there is that we exist to serve and empower 1,500 refugees a year through relational care, education, and development. So thank you for reading that. I'll probably need to shorten it. It feels really lengthy. You did a great job, Kathy. It was perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Like Kathy said, my name is Garrett, and with City of Refuge, of course. One of the things I want to go over with you guys is, all the services that we do and talk through everything. So I'm going to do this as if it's a typical presentation I make, but no group is typical. So if you have questions, you could put them in the chat. And yeah, I really look forward to telling you more. So I'm going to share my screen here. Bring this up. Here we go. Let's see. My screen sharing's paused. Allow. Okay. Here we go. Let's try it. Share. Let's try this one more time. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Tell you what, let me drag it up on this other window.
We hear you fine, and it's there it is.
Yes, we're
Okay.
seeing
We
water.
see mountains. We see lakes.
There you are. You got it.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. And then let's see, slide. I'm gonna show meeting to the side. Oops, hide meeting. Where'd my screen go? Sorry. Okay, we're just gonna leave this up. Oh, there you are. Okay, I can see your faces on this end. I like to see the faces too. So if I'm looking over this way, I'm looking at your beautiful faces. All right, let's move on. So I always like to start by telling people about the Colossus of Rhodes. Anybody here know the Colossus of Rhodes? Just raise your hand if I can see your faces. Okay, great. Some very well-educated people on this. So the Colossus of Rhodes was an old statue back in Greece at the time. They had defeated this foreign enemies and had built this beautiful statue. And they wrote, "Oh, people of the sun, Dorian Rhodes set up this bronze statue to Olympus." And they're basically saying power, might, control. And so time traveling back, this is 280 BC. If you move forward in the 1800s, in 1883, a new colossus is created. And this is all going to make sense why I'm bringing this up. This is important to me, at least. And she calls it, her name is Emma Lazarus, the new colossus. And she writes about not like the brazen giant of Greek fame. You can read this here. But they say, here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome, her mild eyes command the air bridge harbor that twin cities frame. You're seeing a contrast. Does anybody know what this is we're talking about?
Statue of Liberty.
That's right, because the second part of the poem is, keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. So there's a contrast between the two. And ironically, she had written this poem to raise funds for the pedestal for the Statue of Liberty, and when it was dedicated. And so the reason this is also really important to me is my mother immigrated from Chile when she was a little girl. She passed the Statue of Liberty, came through Ellis Island, and came to America like many of our ancestors did, many of the people coming to the US. And so I bring this up to say, what is in your surname? You know, your surname may bring up something Rucinski's on one end, and my mother's name was Zuccoli, and they're a mix of Italians and Croatians. You can see on this map that came from Chile and went all the way up here. And then these are some Polish immigrants who ended up in West Virginia on my dad's side. You know, people move from these locations for a whole host of reasons, and it's in our history. So for me, that's my personal history. And again, you can see Chile up to here in West Virginia, from Poland. And so I like to say to people, we're a lot closer to our ancestors. And the question is, how are they treated? And why I say what's in your surname as well is if you get a chance, you should look up, find where your surname's from. So for mine, it's Polish and Italian, Croatian, and look up that background. And you'll find, chances are in history, that there were people who didn't want your ancestors here. There are also people who did welcome them. So we're interconnected in all of this. One last story I'd like to say to frame all of this is if we move a little forward on our time traveling journey, in 1939 in Hamburg, Germany, a group of individuals seen in these photos traveled from what was called the MS St. Louis. Raise your hand if you know this story. Anyone here? So the MS St. Louis traveled from Hamburg, Germany, about 9 months after the events of Kristallnacht in Germany, right? 7,500 mosques, businesses across the entire country of Germany were destroyed. It's far bigger than I remember learning. And so there was this fear and understanding of what's going to happen. And so this group decides to flee before everything got too serious. And so they leave Hamburg, Germany, and they go to Cuba. And when they arrive at Cuba, Cuba changes their mind and says, we're only going to allow 30 people to come from us. In fact, people jumped off of the ship, cut their wrists. There was all this panic of, we can't go back. And so while they were waiting, they cabled the administration in the United States. And FDR's foreign policy group it said this message. They must await their turns on the waiting list and qualify and obtain immigration visas before they may be admissible into the United States. And then they reached out to one last ditch effort to Frederick Blair's group in Canada. Frederick Blair was their minister, and he said no country could open its doors wide enough to take in the hundreds of thousands of Jewish people who want to leave Europe. The line must be drawn somewhere. And what's really tragic is they talk about how the passengers could see off of the coast of Miami, the lights in Miami glimmering. However, there was an embargo of ships that would not allow them to disembark on the area. So the ship ultimately returns home, and a third of the people on board perish in the Holocaust. It had such a stain on the reaction. You could see somebody on the ship learning they wouldn't be able to leave. It had such a stain on what had happened. There's that post-war guilt and what could we have done as a country. And so out of that was born the desire to start caring about the United Nations and eventually refugee programs in the 1980s. So what the heck is a refugee, right? People are like, there's so many terms out there. Refugees are people who fled violence, war, conflict, persecution, crossed an international border to find safety in another country. They must have a well-founded fear of persecution. Now, there are lots of different terms out there. You may see people from Syria, right? This famous image from years ago, or people at the border in Mexico, earthquakes in Afghanistan after our withdrawal, people working in fields, Nepal and Haiti. So, real fast, one thing I like to remind people about is status. This isn't a perfect list, but it's an easier way to group this in your brain. There are basically 5 immigration status buckets that people can fall into. Interestingly, the Constitution does not codify, sorry, I'm getting some tea here for my voice, does not codify what a citizen is. So you would think that citizenship is codified. It is not. In fact, Congress defined what a citizen is under an Immigration Act. So technically, we have an immigration status of citizen. So you have natural born and naturalized. You have the immigrant group, so green card, family, diversity, etc. Non-immigrants, students, scholars, visitors. And then you'll have unauthorized, which makes up about 13 million people right now. What is not fair is that 8 million of those, while those are undocumented, the remaining 5 are people who are in temporary protected status. And so when it's unauthorized, it means the government didn't know they were coming here, right? There wasn't a plan for those specific people to arrive. So they were unauthorized, but there is a recognition at least of 5 million of those of, okay, 5 million are not undocumented. So it gets really confusing where people just lump in, there are 13 million people here illegally. That's not how that works. And then lastly, you have a humanitarian bucket is what I call it, which is anything refugee, asylum, and then special immigrant visa. So we'll be talking mostly about the humanitarian process. You can see this is just one example of all the different loopholes and things people have to go through on different processes. Essentially, the difference between refugee, I'll show you the typical refugee process, is there's a lot of waiting, and the UN works with Department of State and Office of Refugee Resettlement. However, with asylum, you can show up at a border. There's like 150 countries you could show up to and say, I'm in fear for my life and I have a well-founded fear. They'll let you in and interview you at a certain date. So that's asylum. That makes up about 5% of our population. So not many, but there are some. So we'll focus mostly on refugees in name and term. Just know that there are lots of people in different statuses because refugee is an actual status. Once you're here in refugee status and you've gone through the process, I'm going to show you there's not really a deportation process for you. There's nothing that you're, aside from not voting on a jury, not holding public office, and not voting in an election. Those are the 3 things you can't do until you become a citizen. But asylum and temporary protected status, there's all sorts of crazy flow charts of how people are vetting and trying to see where they fit. So let's hop over real quick and talk about the journey. So for a typical refugee experiencing war, persecution, when they experience these conflicts, and we'll tell you about them, this is how things go. So one thing to clarify real quick there are close to 130 million people now displaced around the world. That is 1,700 Arrowhead stadiums full of people, or 520 March on Washington's. The famous MLK Jr. March was 250,000 people. That is 520 of those. That means people who have been displaced with no guarantee of coming home. But once you're in the refugee status, there really is no home for you to come back to. So out of that 130 million, 36 million of them are currently refugees waiting in camps. Okay. And so you can see over the years that has happened around here, who different people are from. And so some of the past ones, the current conflicts we see here in Colombia, Democratic Republic of Congo, or DRC, or referred to just as Congo, that flared up from Rwanda. You have Burma. Burma makes up the largest group that we work with, Myanmar, and the government and political instability. And then, of course, Afghanistan since the collapse. Those are a big 3. And then we do have some Ukrainians who come through and work with us, who eventually resettle, interestingly, in Sedalia. There's a Russian Orthodox church there. And so for decades now, this growth has grown there of Russian and Ukrainian family members. And it also reminds a lot of our Ukrainian friends of they call it like the bread basket. There's the visual and the fields and the land. So they'll sometimes come through us and move that way. But what this looks like all in all, I'll show you at the end here what our breakdown is. But we serve over 500 Burmese a year, 400 Congolese a year, and over 300 Afghans a year, and then about 20 other countries underneath that. So let's say you flee a country or flee a conflict. You may end up on the perimeter of that country or outside in another country. For instance, Turkey hosts the largest refugee camp for Syria's refugees. This is a camp in Kenya for a lot of countries close by. And what used to be 5 to 10 years is now 15 to 20 years in a refugee camp because the quotas are so low compared to the numbers that need to get out are so high. It takes forever. And the vetting is the highest amount that the departments of state from different countries work with the UN before somebody is permitted to leave. So it's a very, very difficult process to get out of a camp. So let's say that you do get out though, and you've applied through the UN High Commission of Refugees. And then you work with the departments and they choose you. You may be resettled. So, you know what I'm realizing? This is my backup presentation. I just edited this the other day. You guys are going to see the, pardon me. Here we go. Let's go to this one. It looks the same, but there's a little new information in here. All right, let's go back to here. And we'll go to the journey.
I really like your software. That's killer.
Thank you. Thank you. It's we use Prezi. It was new to me after college, but now I run into college kids who are like, "Oh, I learned about that in elementary school." Thank you for making me feel old. But it works great for visuals. Okay, so here we go. Sorry. So they applied through the UNHCR. So resettlement work. Effective April 1, we are temporarily providing the resettlement work that Catholic Charities used to do here in Columbia. Essentially, the first 1 to 9 months, the government helps with Social Security, getting them into a stipend, into an apartment, etc. However, there is a quandary coming up in that October 1, the state, the Office of Refugee Resettlement under Health and Human Services set out a policy a couple weeks ago that said, effective October 1, the state is no longer to use any nonprofits or any agencies. They must do the resettlement work themselves directly. Ironically, the state requested nonprofits to do this work in 2017. So now that is being reversed. They're reversing the policy. And what that means is October 1, I don't know what resettlement's going to look like. Now, if resettlement continues, they've said that they're looking into a federal resettlement agency instead of each state having their own. Then perhaps we would still allocate federal funds to help with those first 9 months, but that is still to be seen. And I'll tell you a little bit more about our funding cuts. It's tied to that policy change. Anyway, we are stepping in and helping with some of our friends who were used to welcome through Catholic Charities. We brought them on for right now in a separate building nearby where they're welcoming them still. There's about 138 refugees still needing that initial assistance. So they are facilitating those funding and we're stepping in to say, we have to do something. And so that's what we're doing on that. But think of resettlement usually as those first 1 to 9 months. Traditionally, we haven't done anything in that. We do everything after that. And so these are people referred to us, word of mouth, churches, organizations, mosques, synagogues. Like I said, 1,500 refugees. You could just see some of these numbers here that we've got, some fun numbers. Oops. And I always love also looking at the kid numbers. Really remarkable how many families and how many kids there are. It's not far off from this. And so, so that's kind of what happens is they eventually show up to us, and I'll tell you what happens when they show up to us. But I would be remiss not to tell you where we're at here in Columbia. So like I told you, we exist to serve and empower refugees through relational care, education, and development. So we are located across from the downtown Daniel Boone Regional Library. Right there, Grant School. My kids all go here. So I actually literally see it out my window right now. And so we're right across from that location. And then whenever you drive by, this is what it looks like. We'll tell you about the boutique. This is our community center. We have a food truck parked here right now. We'll tell you about. And then this is our city preschool that we'll tell you about. So that's all on this site right here. And if you're a college student or talk with college students, they're really confused about the library. So if I say, you know where Canes is, they all laugh and they go, Canes, and then they know where we're at. So Canes, Crunch, and then us up here. So let's talk a little bit about the work that we do. Care coordination. Care coordination is working with our friends in relationship for the everyday things that they need. Barry and Lori have been with us for a while. JJ and Emily joined us recently. And our newest, actually, raise your hand if anyone knows Sarah Justice. She's like, oh, we got some excited people there. She's fantastic. She's growing in our programs as a basic need manager. So working with the food bank, basic needs, toiletries, shampoo, and coordinating, really helping our local efforts. Care coordination looks like meeting with our friends and saying, hey, maybe you need a better job. Let's connect you to American Air Filter or Kraft Heinz, Walmart. You know, they are some of the hardest working, crazy hours and shifts. There's a hunger and a desire to reestablish themselves. So we're constantly working to find what's healthiest for their family. We can teach them about how to grow financially as well within your job. We've had men who've come to us with their wives, especially from some of our more like in Afghanistan, and have said, my wife doesn't need to know how to drive. Well, if in the first week we say, shame on you, you're not allowed to say that, they'll never come back. So through relationship, after 9 months, true story, we had a guy who came back in and he goes, my wife, she just keeps on talking about how she wants to drive. And we looked him in the eyes and said, you really got to let that go. And he went, all right, you're right. His wife was able to take the program, work on driving and getting her driver's license. Those are skills and things that we're able to teach through culture, but you can't do that without the relationship there. Um, Additionally, right next to this, you can see, imagine getting a bill in the mail and it looking like this. So our friends, you know, may come from other countries and see something like this and go, oh, what is this? And not to mention, you know, who here has gotten that bill in the mail from MU Healthcare that says this is not a bill, right? Like, what does that even mean? I don't even know how to explain that. And so we work through those dynamics. We go to clinic visits with them. We're stepping into the relationships there. Basic needs conversations. I bring up Neosporin. We had a guy who came to us once and said, well, does Neosporin help my wife? We meant, what do you mean? He says, well, she had a baby 3 weeks ago and hasn't stopped bleeding. That's a problem. And for us here, like we look at that and go, oh, I can't believe it. But, you know, if you come from some of the most horrific violence, war-torn areas, we have stories of people giving birth and cutting an umbilical cord with a sharpened stick. Like your goal is just to survive. And so once we're here, we're able to move them from a position of just surviving to a position of thriving. We want to say, hey, why can't you afford shampoo and toiletries? Let's get you a better job. Let's teach some better budgeting skills, where you can coupon, where the cheaper stores are. So we're catching them up to speed with something that is paralyzing for many of our friends. The food bank, great partnership with them. Weekly, we can help get groceries into their hands and then also get them enrolled. Imagine doing all that paperwork in a foreign language. You're really nervous. You got 7 kids at home. You don't have time always to practice these things. These things can move that forward. We have a wardrobe here as well, meeting the basic needs. You know, many of you have donated, thank you, to our physical needs. So we get a 15-passenger van full of donations a day. I say the 15-passenger full, if you've seen that meme that says Americans will use anything other than the metric system to measure. But for some of you purists, it's about 3 cubic yards, or 3 cubic meters, if you're real European. And so we have this awesome wardrobe though, where we sort, and if it's profitable or practical is kind of where we go, or productive. For the productive, it ends up here for them to come in and get conservative, clean, good, dignified clothes. So we always keep that stocked. And I'll tell you a little later what we do if we can make a profit off of it. So that's care. Education. Anybody here know Candace Holsizer? Candace is the director of our preschool and education, but she also owns the Black Tea Bookshop downtown at the shops at Sharp End. So if you ever go in there and buy a book, Candace, you're supporting our friend there, and she wants to eventually have a brick and mortar one day. We just love Candace. She has grown this program really well. The main things is kind of from from the baby to the older folks. We are teaching from our preschool, which I'll show you in a second here, but also English classes. This is a snippet of, we actually get 25 people twice a week who are up here cramming English audibly, typing, visually. It is a fast growing program, and we also partner with the Excel Center downtown for that. Here's a snippet of what the preschool looks like in their classes. This is a cross-cultural professional preschool. We have 2 different classes now with a total of 16 kids, half refugee, half local. So they're learning, like, even though their names may be different or their faces may look different, they're like, you're not different at all. We're the same. And they're learning English before they hit CPS. I can tell you as a foster parent, if any of you have worked with children who've been educationally neglected, it is a nightmare to catch up. It's psychologically destructive for the child. And so if we can get them quickly on this curve, they hit the ground running, they learn English so stinking fast. And so that's helping the family too. So that's education. And then really fun one everybody loves to talk about is development. In a nutshell, it's teaching a man to fish, right? Rather than giving him a fish. Artisan programs. Stephanie is working with our friends to learn sewing, weaving, candle making, cards, purses. And this is an opportunity where many women can go down there, literally let their hair down, because a lot of times they can't around men. And we'll find Burmese, Congolese, Afghan, Eritrean women laughing together, even if they only know 10 words in English. It's getting them out of the homes to start new businesses and provide new life. That program continues to grow and grow and grow. Driving and transportation, Vivi helps us with this. We have a simulator we got a year and a half ago. You may or may not know that to drive, I basically ask who here had their parents teach them, and most people raise their hand. Well, if mom and dad passed away in a foreign conflict and you're here by yourself, or all of your friends who you could borrow their car are at work, you don't have a vehicle to take the test. Now, you can buy a car because they have enough money, but you cannot buy a car in Missouri unless you have a license and insurance. But you cannot get your car. It's like a catch-22. You can't do either without the other. And so this is teaching them lanes, braking, stopping, everything, so that when they get in a volunteer's vehicle, this does not mean to say this, multiple volunteers will come back to us before we had the simulator and said, I thought that I was going to die. Because for us, we remember as kids, right? On the car, we remember how lanes work and the flow of traffic and the stop and go. Well, if you're not from that, it's a radical concept. So this allows them to get familiar. And then when they're in the vehicle with the volunteer, everybody is safe. Everybody is learning together. We've had over 11 people now who have gotten their driver's license, are driving to work and not spending the average of $500 a month on Uber to get to work. That's become an unfortunate reality. So this is tackling that, and we're working to continue getting more and more volunteers involved. Our culinary program, Nathan ran a truck, 12 baskets for many years. He's recently won the award at the Let Them Eat Art Contest. Here's them winning together, Nathan and Kelly. We have a food truck that we'll show you later in the slides outside our building now. Today, Ninram was in there. She's one of our refugee friends learning culinary, food safety, preparation, certificates, so that one day if she wants to open her own restaurant or catering business, she can. So this allows people of our community every Tuesday and Friday to come out 11 to 1 and eat at the truck. And we also just got hot off the press. I have one in my bag here. And we'll show you this at the end, the different version, but catering and box lunch menus. Oh, you don't see my camera yet, but I'll show you after. No, you can't see it. So we have a bunch of these, and people are calling off the hook now about setting up catering and box lunches outside of those hours to help. And that program, by the way, the truck has been fully funded through a national empowerment grant. So that is finished, and we're working to continue to grow it. Raina helps with our youth programs on Wednesdays and Thursdays. I was in there last night, and it looks like this. This is during a presentation, but just tons of kids learning side by side. We're not religious or partisan as an organization, but the closest thing it would be to is like a youth group. It's a great place for them to go after school, get away from annoying mom and dad, commiserate about how annoying they are. And the irony is they can find unity in that together to be like, oh, you were in a camp? I was in a camp, or my mom was. And there's a lot of healing in there and growth that comes from that. So that's a lot of our development stuff. And at the end, I'm going to make time for questions here. Real fast, you may have known we've been around for 15 years. It started a long time ago as a tiny little, there's one or two people at Christian Fellowship who wanted to get involved with the refugee population. They made a cleaning company and they started growing, growing, growing. The economy got so good that the refugees didn't need that anymore. So we started connecting them to jobs, and City of Refuge was born. The programs have grown, as you can see, over the years. And then at the end of last year, we announced our Love Your Neighbor program, or our campaign. The goal was to get away from refugee or from grants as much as possible. We wanted to kind of have a 2/3 or 1/4 of grant funding, not where we're at, which is about 50%. We've moved out of that 50 to 60% private. However, October 1, because of that policy, also affects us in that we will also lose 40% of our funding come October 1. So what we are doing is we are reaching out and talking to as many people. We're trying to get 1,000 donors at $50 a month. Some people are doing 300 a month, so that gets me a good 6 people effectively to make up $50,000 a month in some of our funding. So we do have enough momentum where we can go into 2026 with our reserves. We would love not to touch our reserves. So I have increased my knocking on every door I can to get where we're at. So one quick story I'll tell you, and then I'll talk about how to get involved. It's a personal story for me. I was downstairs and we had a refugee. This person actually was asylum seeker. I think she might have been, actually, she might have been, yeah, asylum seeker. She came on in from Honduras and she had a little 3-year-old girl with her. And I'm talking in Spanish. And I'm like, oh, I'm looking, and I'm like, man, your arrival date and your daughter's birth date seem to be the same. And she was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." Just casually tells me I was traveling through the desert and I got separated from my kids, or from I got separated from the group. I had my 2-year-old son with me at the time, and my 3-year-old and my daughter. I was in labor. I was 9 months pregnant. We hadn't eaten in 5 days and hadn't had water for 2 days, and I went into labor on the other side of the fence. And by the grace of God, a border patrol person found me. They brought me to the US side where I gave birth to my daughter. And I'm very, like, sure enough, like the dates and her birth are the same. And so through blood transfusions and all sorts of things, she eventually makes her way up here. And we're able to start talking with her about the process, how to change her status, what those things look like. But these are just everyday stories here in town. How can you help? Right? Well, we talk about love your neighbor, whether it's Mr. Rogers, Jesus in the Talmud, etc. There's a lot of great ways to learn how to love your neighbor, and that looks like donating, serving, and shopping. So, obviously, I'm here making pitches to all sorts of people to tell them how to get involved. If you're retired and you have an IRA account, those QCDs, your qualified charitable distributions, are incredibly impactful. The monthly donating you could find on our site is very, very helpful for sustainability for us. But of course, there's taxes, shares. We do have tax credits, etc. Giving vehicles. We have refugees who could really use a vehicle, and we have a mechanic who fixes it up at cost. There's somebody who gave land. Does anybody here know Mary Jean Leeper? Awesome. I'm getting some head nods. Mary Jean donated 30 acres of land. CCUA, our friends, have been helping us with some row cropping out there for our friends. It is very sustainable working with the land. We have a lot of long-term plans for that in programming out there. And then, sponsoring, partnering in events. If you have a business or know of one, we have people who are raising awareness. We have a big summer market coming up now in June, and we have another one in our holiday markets. So we can get involved that way on our social media. Sponsorships. There are businesses who go, hey, we can do marketing and signage and help you out. Those are really popular. The boutique. Our boutique I told you about takes those items that are profitable and makes over 10% of our annual budget. They're affordable. And then there's also a wall in there in the boutique where, well, I don't have it in this picture, but there's a wall kind of over here. See it a little bit. And these are all items that are made by hand by our refugees who've started businesses. That goes directly to them. So they have their own businesses. One is a 15-year-old girl named Fareshta, fled Afghanistan when she was 10. She has her own business. We have women who come to us with tears in their eyes who say, you don't understand. This is the first time I've ever been able to make money in my life. And we're able to give them that that ability. So come on in Monday through Friday, 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Follow us on Facebook. We have fun sale days, and it's just a great way. Maybe you have some fun purses and clothes or shoes and suits lying around. Bring them to us. If we can move it and bring it to the refugee, we will. If it's something we can turn into funding, we will. It's a great way to help. Our food truck, that's the hottest thing that I was telling you about. I actually just had these smashed tacos over here on the right for lunch today. And so it's a great way to come on out and support our friends, our refugee friends in the truck. And like I mentioned, we're also starting up catering and box lunches now. And you can see kind of here's when you go online and look up City of Refuge, you'll see city cuisine as an option. And these are some of the things that you can do. Some really tasty. Look at those. Am I making you hungry? So volunteering, we've had 150 people sign up to volunteer since January. So we are flooded, which is good. Because of that, the number one that we're really still slowly trying to find people for is the driving simulator. So keep us in mind because we may at one point say we need more volunteers, but right now that's one of the few that we still have openings for. Doesn't hurt to join us on a waiting list. But another one that we're creating is called our neighbor volunteer position. I have to get around to finally setting this up with my crew. I've been out meeting with tons of people, but it's essentially going to be like an ambassador where you can go out and tell other people what I'm telling you. You don't have to know all the info. Basically, you're just saying, hey, come with me to the boutique or cuisine, or you should join me in donating, or let's tell more and more people about City of Refuge. That spreading the word is really raising awareness and helping us become self-sustainable. So I have friends who also, and I'll give you my contact at the end, are connecting with me and going, hey, I'm setting up a tour for you, Garrett, with my friend Bruce. And I have a tracking, like a touring link, and they can just use that and set it up. And so getting the word out there with friends that you know who want to help us is so important. We have internships. So if you know of youngins who love interns, we got 10 interns right now. We'll do them through the summer and then also going to do them in the fall. So each semester. And then spreading the word. Our friends Mike Kelly, Voice of the Tigers, Matt Moore here with Shelter through a fun fundraiser, raised a lot of money for us. So that's also a really cool way. As well as hosting a drive, right? There's basic needs items that you could also donate on our website. If you go to the donate tab, as you scroll down, it says, what are some items you need? And there's an Amazon wish list. So maybe you and some friends want to get some items there. And then follow and share our socials. So I'll leave these up. If you want to scan it, it'll take you right to our socials right now. But I want to open it up for questions. I know I just threw a lot at you, but I always love the question section, so I try to get there.
Thank you, Garrett. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Do you want to try to field your own questions? There don't seem to be very many in the chat, if any.
That's fine.
I have some questions. I was just going to ask
People
them,
raise
but
their
I could
hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, go for it.
Okay, so you guys, based on what you said and also on the press release that you guys released beginning this month, you guys are looking to fulfill a lot of positions. Can you just talk about, I know you mentioned it and you had a list of like area positions that you want, but these positions are all volunteer, correct? None of these are paid at all.
Great question. When you're saying the list of positions, can you clarify what you mean?
In a few slides before you just showed volunteers that you need, you had training and all that.
Yes. Yeah. Those were positions those are the majority of what we have. And let me show you guys. Let's do this real quick. Let me go over to our website. Because
I'm posting that page in the chat right now.
thank you. When you go over to get involved, you can go down to volunteer. And what I love on this is, there's the application, of course, but then what's really neat is we have a really cool thing here where you could break down. You can see a lot of our roles are filled on the right, but as they come available, you can click on the expand and it breaks down, but none of these are paid. These are all just volunteer positions. But yeah, they can come in here and explain when they come available, like what dates we need them. So transportation team does have a couple that are left. A couple of these have a couple that are left. So again, we were slammed since January, which is a good thing, but we have over 220 weekly volunteers now. And so there's a lot of training, background checks, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, volunteers, there's still a couple there if they visit volunteer. And then as far as any time people in the future want, they can go to join our team. There are a couple that are open right now for city preschool. We are looking for a teacher's aide and a teacher. So those are posted on there. Those are paid positions that we're currently looking at.
Based
Okay.
on the slide that you guys have, you said there was 800 refugees in total. Is that current right now? Because on the press release, it says that you guys will have 138 individuals enrolled in the program. So are those two different things, or?
Yeah. So great question. So when I was talking at the beginning about resettlement agencies, that first 1 to 9 months, it can go beyond that.
Okay.
There are several little federal grant programs, state grant programs that fund those initial things. There are 138 people who are receiving those benefits right now. So
Okay.
those we hired 4 people basically over from Catholic Charities. There's one who was non-Catholic Charities, but brought people over to say, let's continue to work with those 138 people. As long as that funding exists, right, or those programs exist, we'll work with them. Outside of that, beyond that number, the total amount, so it'd be like 1,400 and change, but the total amount overall that we serve are 1,500 refugees a year. So 138 of those right now are receiving that very specific subset that we're stepping into temporarily.
Out of the 1,500.
Correct. I got some other questions here up on this one too. Do you have any other questions for me, Euphony?
Yes.
Go for it. I mean, we have time. So
Yeah.
ask.
Okay. And then what statement can you say about you guys needing 1,000 monthly donors? Some may say that's like a lot, but I know you mentioned that you have some that are giving you $300 as opposed to $50. So what can you say about that?
Great question. That only makes up 0.8% of the entire population of Colombia. And Colombia is such an active community and such an engaged community that we have seen over 80 people in the month of March alone who started donating to us on a monthly basis or increased their donations significantly. And so because of that, I think had we not seen that, maybe we would have been a little trepidatious. It is an ambitious goal, very much so, but it's attainable. Colombia has the ability to do it, and we believe that we can get there.
You can have another question later. Let's go to Marie right now.
I just want to say thank you for all that City of Refuge does. I've been involved with 2 different refugee families, one through my church and one through my Rotary Club, and they both benefited tremendously from the services you provide. My question has to do with kind of looking to the future, and I have to say I'm confused about how the policy changes at the national level are going to affect refugees coming in. Do you anticipate we'll still be receiving new refugees at all? And if not, well, I'll just leave it at that.
No,
what's the pipeline look like?
Yeah. First, thank you for your support and your work in that and your kind words. Yeah, do we anticipate it's going to be weird after October 1? Maybe I wouldn't want to put weird. Euphony, don't put my word weird in there in the report. Let me rephrase this. What I would say is we know that the government has said from a federal level that they want to create a refugee resettlement program, something that's like nationwide potentially. So will they continue to help resettle refugees? It seems that that's what they say they want to do, but they also paused refugee resettlement for the first 90 days on the first day of the new administration. So how many refugees are going to come in? You know, it was a little over 100,000 who came in. The highest the quote has ever been was 125,000 under Biden per year could come in. 100,000 and change was about the amount last year that came in 2024. The first Trump administration, the lowest it has ever been since 1980 when the program was created, was 15,000. And so with this pause, I would not be surprised if it's a very, very small number just based on the rhetoric and the statements that they've been making and how they want to align it. how does that affect what we do at City of Refuge or refugees in the central Missouri area? Well, great question. Funny enough, we have become a beacon on a hill. And when refugee resettlement was being done under Catholic Charities and local agencies, they had their own programs as well they were working with. So we didn't have a per se direct like pipeline of, hey, when you're done, Catholic Charities, come here. Refugees in our community just showed up and they would make referrals to us and would come from organizations. And it was so powerful that over the last several years now, people consistently move from Seattle, Washington, Boston, Texas, because they hear from a friend who they were in a camp with, or as a distant cousin who says, move your whole family to Columbia. The people here are fantastic, welcoming, and there's this organization called City of Refuge. So strangely enough, regardless of what the federal government does, we only see, especially if resources are limited, more and more refugees coming to us. As far as the services that are available for refugees, without that initial resettlement, if no refugees are coming in, that kind of becomes a moot point. Because after those initial 9 months, aside from some things that can go up to 5 years, it's not really federal programs to help them. They're supposed to be self-sufficient. But there are programs that we work very closely with: Medicaid, Medicare, or not box lunch, lunch programs, signing up for utilities, LIHEAP, right? So the LIHEAP program was officially, the entire staff was let go 2 weeks ago at the federal level. That's the energy assistance policy, right, with utilities. And so some of these are programs that we can use to help in gaps. Without those, will it make it harder for not just refugees, but everyone? Absolutely. So we only look at that to go, in this time, yeah, it feels like we're stepping into a big unknown, and we are. But we're very proud to step forward into that unknown. So we don't know what it's going to look like, but we do know that we have a track record of stepping into it and doing it faithfully.
David or Carol.
David, looking over, I think when you were, Garrett, when you were showing the volunteer opportunities, there was something called transportation drivers needed, or something. I think it's what it was showing.
Yeah.
Are you looking, would people need to provide their own vehicles, or do you have vehicles, you just need drivers?
Yeah, we do have our own vehicles for certain transportation programs where we are transporting to and from. So we do have a Sprinter van through some funding and things like that we can do, other vans. So we can use that. As far as the driving simulator and then training, those are volunteer vehicles, but everything under the transportation side is provided. Great question.
And Garrett, how do you pronounce your last name?
Yeah, Rucinski. And a fun thing I tell all the news organizations, a lot of people accidentally call us the City of Refuge, but there's no "the" in front of it. So just City of Refuge. I think, Kathy, you got your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Did you show us a graphic about your sources of funding to support what you're doing, or could you tell us about that more?
Yeah, you know what? Tell you what I'll do. I don't have the graphic readily available on me. However, I have a link to, we just on Wednesday did our, it's called our quarterly updates, quarterly catch-ups are what we call them. Let me pull it up for you actually here. It was under, we just sent it out today on, actually, if you go to our website and click blog, I'm going to put this in the chat. If you go to more, you'll read, the program, etc. Here's that monthly giver, if you can see on my screen. So this is where we're at. So we're over 10% of the way there. Yeah, we have over 100 people now already in the 1,000 journey. And then here you'll see here, quarterly catch up in case you missed it. And so when you click on this, I'll put it in here.
All right, well, welcome everybody.
We have a breakdown, and if you see on the screen, Debbie breaks down right here where our current projected incomes are. And so she talks through that whole thing. And then we have Paul from Maora. He talks because he's the Missouri Refugee Resettlement. And then eventually we all do kind of breakdowns of the different programs we offer. So we do these quarterly now. So I'll put this link, the video in the chat. It's an hour long, but it's a great one.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think, is that Al? Al has a question?
No, I do.
Mary Jo does.
Oh, Mary Jo does. Hi, Mary Jo. How are
Hi,
you?
how are you? Good to see you.
Good. Good seeing you.
I have a question about, because we are such a friendly refugee community,
Yeah.
do we have any organized plan for responding to ICE or groups like that, should that become an issue?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. The last I checked, Colombia does not have an MOU still with Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement. So the Sheriff's Department does. However, from what we understand, it's not a top priority. That being said, we have crafted our own policy. So if somebody does come here, there are steps that all staff and volunteers know what to do as far as who they need to see, permissions, warrants, etc. So we're not hiding anything. Everything we do is above ground, but we also want our place to be welcoming and safe. And so we do have a plan on that end, and really we don't want to also spook our refugee friends, right? So there's a tact to how much we talk about with them. They're trying to learn English, stay afloat with 7 kids, 2 jobs. So the last thing I want to do is be afraid, be constantly afraid, right? So we try to provide them with good next steps of be aware that you need to adhere to these things, right? These are very important legal things to know. Keep these on your person. So we have some of those that we do as well to make sure they know. Great question.
I'd like to try a follow-up on what Kathy was asking about the various aspects and funding and all that sort of thing. It seems like your center, a pretty small building, is set up to provide absolutely everything. And I suppose that's really good for the people who've just arrived. You know, they really feel like they've got the one-stop place. And yet you're also connected to a lot of really important partners who can take up someone when they've advanced to that level. Is it true also that your volunteers then find contacts to, let's say, career and maybe even paid positions in that world as well? Finally, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I went to Ukraine and Russia 25 years ago, and I've been up to my eyeballs in Ukrainians and Russians ever since.
Nice.
And love it. It's bothered the fact they're pestering me right now. But you've sold me. I'm going to have a connection to your organization and join at that entry level.
Thank you, David.
Because
Thank you so much.
I'm just so impressed by what you've convinced me a community like ours can really do in this atmosphere. It seems like the Columbias are going to have to step up now.
Man, David, thank you first and foremost. That's so kind of you and encouraging. You mentioned the volunteer thing. Absolutely, we do get volunteers who become more and more intimately involved. Our English Buddy program, they're meeting for 2 hours a week in the homes of our refugee friends, and they become an advocate and a friend and such a support. So yeah, the connections to better jobs, to new ideas. We have a lot of just beautiful cultural growth that's happening on that end. Your remarks about Ukraine, when you get a chance, I'll put this up. There's an article, I think his name's Bear, but we say Bear, and it was in the Columbia Missourian, Ukraine. I'll put the link to this. And this is a beautiful story. This is about 10 months ago. And it was his story of escaping from Russia. And they wanted him to fight Ukrainians. And he has a son with special needs. And he and his family escaped, went to the southern border, and were able to cross and came in under a program. And we worked closely with him. So that's just if you haven't heard that story, it is a beautiful story. I'm going to put that in the group down here. But yeah, I mean, and they're beautiful people, right? Like these are the people that we want to have in our community. And I will say again, just to reiterate, Columbia has been so stinking welcoming. And I think we have shown time and time again that we can be a place that stands up and says, no, like we're building a beautiful fabric here.
Well, these people help make us even better. And I think you're helping to prove that.
Thank you, David.
Another question from the Tackers.
Yeah.
No? Oh, they're just having trouble with the little flag. They have a lot of experience to draw from, which is why I thought they maybe
I think
had some.
Pam is literally raising her hand in the corner
Right.
here. I think.
All right, good.
Next Tuesday, the 15th, from 6 to 8 p.m. online, there is an immigrant justice volunteer training, and we have it. I don't think I got it in my announcements now, but I will have it before I send it out. It was in the Boone County Democrats, their announcements. And it's so small, it's difficult for me to read where it came from, but it looks very important.
That does look awesome.
So, it's from 7 to 8 p.m. It's IFER Fund volunteers. You know about IFER?
I don't know much.
Okay. I made it. I made Solidarity in Action. ASHREI Foundation.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like, I almost wonder if that's a legal group, if I remember correctly. That's part of that.
It's part of Immigrant Service Providers Network.
That does sound interesting.
Okay, I'll make sure that you get it.
Please do.
I think I will.
It cut out for a second,
You
David.
froze up on us, David. Try again. That may not work. You're going to have to type it to the chat or we're not going to know what you're saying. I'm guessing
Someone
David
else
Robin.
think.
Oh, here we go. Sorry.
David, it was all frozen up on you. Oh no, he's dropped.
Yeah, I'm guessing he was saying, thank you very much for being here. And it's getting time to close the speaker's portion of the meeting. And unless ABC 17 has one more question.
I don't have a question. I just would like to be notified when the video is posted so I can go back and use it for
That one's ready to go. So if you go to if you head to that, I actually put it up here. You'll see under the YouTube.
Yeah, no, I saw, but
No,
I record video.
I record these meetings and she'll want to do that. And I'll allow clips if that will help you.
All
and
right.
if anybody else wants to get involved, like David, you mentioned, David, we didn't hear your end part there. They were summarizing it. It froze up. But, you know, please, I just put in here to book a time or visit. You can click on that link that's in there, and that allows you to find a time and just come for a behind the scenes visit. I'd be happy to get tea, coffee. We have a donor who'll cover the cost of lunch if you want to have a lunch meeting. So we can talk about what you can do, kind of like what David's saying. We'd love to show you.
This volunteer training, now I can see the first hour is for hotline operators, to teach hotline operators.
Interesting.
And then the second hour is the IFER fund volunteers. So a lot of information in this little thing, but
I'll also put my email here at the bottom.
yeah, I need that.
And that way, if you just go here, let's meet.
I can send it to you directly.
There we go. I'd be always happy to show. And same with doing presentations off site. I do presentations. We did 100 tours here last year. So there's all sorts of ways to bring your friends and get involved.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Garrett.
so
This is
much. This has been a terrific.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really inspiring.
Well, you guys make a great city. We wouldn't have City of Refuge without City of Columbia. So we appreciate it. from you
And
guys.
Boone County.
And Boone County. Thank you guys. Take care.
Thank you.